All right. I hope everybody is doing well on this Wednesday hump day. Super excited, especially kind of for me growing up within the industry and growing up with Neil Spruce through Apex, NASM, Dot Fit. But we finally get a chance to interview one of the family, the one and only Nelson Spruce. So, Nelson, super excited you're able to join us today. As you and I have talked about, I've got a whole list of fun questions I can't wait to dive into with a whole bunch of stuff, okay? So how are you doing right now, though? You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm great. Talking a
Awesome.
bit.
Awesome. If you kind of notice the little the Colorado jersey back there, we're gonna touch on some of those things coming up here soon as well. But Nelson, let's start off with the first question I've got for you. This goes back because I was living in California from probably '98 to about 2005 when he was just a little kid. So I want to jog your memory here. So what I've got for you is, can you take us back to the old Pop Warner days? This
Yeah.
is when we were in our facility for NASM in Calabasas, California. And of course, Nelson was being coached by his dad, as well as, many other great coaches. But they would all bring Nelson and his teammates in for film study in Pop Warner. They did make it a pizza party too, but we would have all these kids in the classroom, never mind training, but actually watching film back in the day. But Nelson, tell us a little bit, if you would, please. Take a few minutes though. What the heck was it like in Pop Warner days? He had this long hair that was amazing, right? And all this stuff. So go for us if you would.
Yeah, I mean those days were a lot of fun, and like looking back at them when you were talking about like at the time it kind of seemed normal, but looking back at it, like going through film as like a 9-year-old, I don't think many teams are doing that in the country. So it was cool. I think it was every Wednesday we would get together, do pizza and milk. I don't even know what we were watching. Like I don't know how much game planning you can do as an 8-year-old. Like,
Yeah, really,
but,
right?
but it was always fun. It was kind of just a way to bring the team together and hopefully get a little edge on our opponent.
Yep, yep. And then, we're going to get into this, but Nelson plays at the professional level now. And back then though, you had a bunch of people as well that you also played with, that whether they went professional in football or baseball or other sports. I mean, how weird is that now for you to be sitting here, in your mid-20s, looking back going, man, you've even had some repeat times playing with former teammates that
Right.
have come back up. What was that like?
No doubt. Like I don't know, that's always your dream. That's always your goal to make it to the professional level, but it's kind of just almost unreal getting there. Just, it's such a long journey and we had started it so young. Even guys that was watching film with, like we were just talking about at 8 years old, Michael Bercovici, who was my quarterback then, ended up being my quarterback again for a professional team I was playing for. So a lot of that does come full circle. And I think it's kind of rare that um, like two guys in our situation that I was close with got to be able to progress together through the ranks and make it to that level.
Yeah, yeah. Nelson, what position did you play even in Pop Warner? If you'll just remind us.
I did a lot. My first position, when I was like 7 years old, I was too young to even be playing tackle football at the time, so we had to like sign a waiver to allow it. But I was a cornerback,
Okay.
defensive back, yeah. And then kind of as the years started progressing, I got over to offense. I played a little bit of quarterback, running back mostly. And then as I got through high school, just strictly, well, I was still playing DB in high school, a little bit of receiver,
Okay.
or mostly receiver. And then once I got to college, just strictly receiver.
Okay. All right. Hey, so we'll get into this even more, but I just want to touch on this too. So what was it like having dad, right?
Yeah.
As I mean, for most people on this call know Neil pretty well. I mean, Neil obviously, was this highly competitive, highly successful bodybuilder going throughout all the different stages, played high school football. We always say definitely live vicariously through Nelson, especially through the stages he was able to get. And Nelson, you've never heard me say this, Frankie has, And you can't tell your dad because I don't think he knows this either, but I always make a running joke, but it's with all love because I'm a parent as well. But you cannot have a conversation with Neil without him somehow working in that Nelson played in the NFL. Like it could be like, man, it's beautiful out today. You know, I think we're supposed to have a little cold front today. Did I tell you about Nelson playing in the NFL? And I just say, you know, it's with all love though, because again, he's a real proud dad of, you know, today we're focusing on you, but obviously of your, you know, your brother and sister as well. But what was that like having this guy that a lot of us know that is, you know, very focused on one thing, and that's what he does. I know he takes a lot of pride in being able to work with you guys throughout the years.
I think for me, like as I'm getting older and started to play at different places and different levels, like a lot of things that were ingrained in me at a young age, I kind of took for granted. Like as far as nutrition and just taking care of my body, you know, you talk about, you know, obviously my dad is the expert when it comes to nutrition. So that was kind of just ingrained in me at a young age and really helped me kind of separate myself, I feel like, especially when I got to the higher levels, when I started facing, you know, better athletes and I wasn't necessarily the best athlete on the field. Those were the little things that gave me an edge. And yeah, just so, and I just got to see people that came from different situations. They weren't necessarily as tuned in with all that stuff. And like I said, the higher that you get to in whatever your sport is, the more those little things start to make a difference. So that's one thing I just like, I look back on and just realize that a lot of things that I was kind of privileged to know at a young age isn't necessarily common knowledge by any means. So
right. Hey, so do us a favor, share with us, if you would then, what was it like even as a little kid growing up kind of in the Spruce household, more on the side of, let's say, healthier habits, right? Yeah. And I've been to their house many times. Their supplements are lined up legit. I mean, you know, but true story, you know what I mean? And, you know, I've known you guys for a long, long time. It's not made up, you know, but what was that like now for you to look back and go, you know, that was, like you said, it was the norm, but it wasn't the norm for everybody.
Yeah. And, you know, a lot of my friends will joke, like, growing up in the family that I did, that I was like, you know, they expected everything to be like almost robotronic and all that, but it wasn't. I just kind of, I guess what my dad taught me was just do the right things first, and then, you know, just cover all your nutritional bases, take your multivitamin, and then, you know, there's no need to be psychotic about it, but at the same time, just do things the right way and put the right things in your body, and then kind of, you know, whatever you want to indulge in after that is fine. But nice. I'll always like laugh because one thing that we were just talking about doing the film study when we were 8 years old. We would, every night before the game, my dad would come out with a meal plan for us, depending on what time our game was the next day.
No way, not your dad.
Yeah, about meal timing, like, you know, portion sizes, different macronutrients that we needed just to, you know, so our energy system was good to go for a game. And we're 8 years old. Yeah. And, you know, I get to college and we're not even doing that stuff. So yeah, just little stuff like that is, you know, at the time, you know, seems like the norm, but not a lot of kids were privileged to that.
Yep. All right. Now here's one I think is going to be valuable for a lot of people out there. And I'll tell you what, it's a little bit of a selfish question too, but, you know, I've got an 11-year-old daughter. And, you know, my dreams are, you know, she will love working out as much as I do. And I want her to be able to work out with me. So where I'm going with this, though, is from your perspective, where was it that you decided to follow, you know, what your dad is actually teaching? And I know he didn't force you guys. It wasn't like that. But, you know, how did you go, I like what he's saying, or I believe what he's saying, and I know this is going to help me, right? Because I think we all, like, I worry about, I don't want to push her away by being too much of an influence. So from where you're at now, looking back.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always knew sports, like from the young, like whenever I started, that was what I wanted to do. And like the further I progressed in it and the higher levels that I got into it, I kind of realized that if this is what I want to do, I need to find the ways to be the best at it. So that's when I started to realize that a lot of things that, I mean, admittedly, I was doing a lot of the stuff that my dad told me to do just because he was my dad in the beginning. But then as I progressed and I started to see the benefits of it, as I got into college, I saw it as a way I could kind of differentiate myself from a lot of other players and separate myself, taking care of my body, putting the right things in it. That kept me healthy. That kept me on the field, which at the end of the day is the most important thing. So that's when, I guess, kind of as I was transitioning from high school into college, when that competition level is just so fierce, you need to find ways to differentiate yourself and kind of find ways to be better. That's when I started kind of really appreciating it and really getting into it and understanding that if I want to do this, this is what I need to do.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, before we skip to college, talk about Westlake for a little bit, and obviously you guys here, Westlake Village, a hotbed in this area as well for, all kinds of people that have gone on to the next level big time. But from what I understand, career for high school, 2,800 yards receiving, 37 touchdowns, 149 catches, right? Not sure where all those still stand in the Westlake record books, but I know as we know, a lot of people, that came after you, like we were talking before about Nick Corso with his son and Vinny was looking at, what Nelson did, you set the bar pretty high and you became that role model for a lot of people. Give us a couple thoughts of maybe some of your most favorite memories of high school football. What happened back then? Share one or two great stories for us.
Well, I think overall, looking back on like my football career, I think high school was my favorite kind of period.
Really?
Yeah, I just think like high school in general, and I've gone back to Westlake and kind of talked to, teams that have come after me. And that's something I always say is just as you get into college and then professional, it just becomes more business like, and a lot of guys are kind of in it for themselves. But I feel like high school is kind of the last point where you're truly playing for the love of the game. You're playing for your brothers next to you. And it's like a lot of cliches, but as I've gone through this past decade and kind of look back on it, that's really what I feel like. Friday nights at Westlake were like obviously some of the best memories I've ever had in my life. And it was awesome to be on a good team. We went to 2 state championships. We won one. I still talk to a bunch of kids that I played with. So just that overall feeling of the purity of the sport and just playing for the love of the game. That's like high school. That's what I'll always say about high school.
All right. So come on, I know you gotta have like that one, whether it was the game or the catch or a touchdown or coming over the middle, like what was something that sticks out? I mean.
All right. Yeah. I'll give you a few specifics. Well, my first one is, so I was on varsity as a sophomore. I was actually playing mostly DB. I was doing a little bit of receiver, but I was playing mostly DB. And we're going, and I didn't have I wasn't feeling that comfortable yet. Like I belonged on that level. A lot of guys are still older than me, faster than me. But my junior year, first game of the year, I was, stepping into a bigger role. I was kind of the number one receiver going into the season, but I still didn't necessarily have that confidence in myself. So first game of the year, I had 4 catches, 4 touchdowns, and like 220 yards.
Oh, dang, like Randy Moss stats right there.
Right. And it wasn't necessarily about the numbers. That's just kind of when, I guess the first time in high school that I realized okay, this is something I can do. And, everyone, I think no matter what they do, they have that first moment of when they realize they get that confidence in themselves. And that kind of set me up. From there, I never looked back. Like you said, some of my career stats, and I was lucky enough to have a good team around me, a good quarterback. But in football, having that confidence in yourself is huge, just because there's so many one-on-one matchups and, just believing in yourself. So that moment was kind of big for me, I feel like, and kind of set me on a good trajectory for the rest of high school.
That's awesome. I got to see some film on that one. That is amazing. So then you make the transition to Colorado. So for those of you that don't know, let me throw some things out there for you, okay? So Nelson had a stellar career, all right? Give you some numbers here. So career for Colorado, 294 catches, 3,300 yards, 23 touchdowns. He's either tied or holds 43 different records. And he was a 2-time semifinalist for what they call the Biletnikoff Award, which they give to the highest rated wide receiver in college, right? So pretty awesome stuff. Nelson, what led you to Colorado?
Well, that's kind of an interesting, I wasn't necessarily on top of the recruiting process coming out of high school. I had a lot of interest from different teams, but I had never been through it. Obviously, I didn't have really anyone close to me that went through it. And I was getting some attention, but nothing really I don't know. I just didn't know how to interact with these colleges, and I guess I wasn't showing that I was interested, even though I was. It was got kind of complicated. But growing up on the West Coast, I wanted to play in the Pac-12. You know, I'd grown up watching USC, UCLA, Stanford. And the year I was coming out of high school, Colorado, it was their first year in the Pac-12. So I didn't really necessarily know anything about them, but like late in the process, they offered me, and I kind of jumped on it right away. I hadn't even visited yet. And then I took my visit before I enrolled there. And I mean, the city of Boulder was awesome. The people there are awesome. So I was happy with my choice. I didn't necessarily know how it was going to go, but looking back, you know, 4.5 years later, it was an awesome decision.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So, I got to hit you with the same question there as what we did with high school. I know you had a lot of moments, but share with us, if you would, a few there that stand out.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, looking back on it now, I think I left Colorado as the all-time receptions leader in the Pac-12. And at the time, it was, you know, midway through my senior year that I had broken that record. And it was actually at the Rose Bowl in UCLA in front of like a lot of my hometown friends, which was cool. And at the time, I guess I didn't really reflect on it, but, you know, I think about it now, like the Pac-12, how many great receivers have come through there, how many awesome teams there's been, you know, so to be able to kind of leave my mark on it like that, that's something that I can reflect on and always be proud of.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing feat, amazing feat. Before we go further, little time out here on the football side for a second. So, those of us associated here with DotFit and, Apex back in the day and everything, obviously we all know your dad, but I want to bring somebody up I know that also your dad gives a lot of credit to, and who's a pretty freaking cool person too. I've had the chance to work for her as well for, years and years and years and know her. But tell us a little bit about your mom. You got one heck of a cool mom, Christina Spruce. I mean, tell us though, Nelson, because she can hang with the boys. She knows how to deal with between you and your, jujitsu crazy brother and, everything else. And she fits in just fine, especially. And for those of you that don't know, Christina was actually, the CFO of Apex. NASM, has always been the backbone. And Neil will tell you this time and time again. So, the business sense as well, which is amazing. But tell us, Nelson, especially from your perspective.
Right. I mean, yeah, when I was younger, you were just saying, I got to see my mom kind of in the work environment, doing the financial side of things for Apex, NASM. She's kind of transitioned away from that a little bit, but I feel like she has to do even more now. Like she's kind of like the glue that keeps everything together, I would say. Like a lot of, obviously, everyone in our family is like really driven, really passionate. So we can kind of get like just focused in on where and buried into where, our passion is. So she's kind of the one that, I don't know, I feel like just makes everything run smoothly. Especially with my dad. I feel like, we might go broke if it wasn't for her, for her keeping an eye on things.
Jill would agree with you on that one for sure. For sure.
Just to see the way that she is, like I said, just kind of the glue and makes everything run smoothly for us has been, everyone kind of has their, their strengths and their role within the family. And I just feel like she's by far the most important.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So what are some of the key things, one or two, if there's more, that's great, that maybe you said, what, from your mom, you really learned this and she taught me this, and maybe she didn't even do it consciously. Maybe it was more subconsciously from just, growing up around her.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess maybe just balance. And, like I said, like a lot of it, we were really driven, and especially now that I'm, maybe towards the end of where I am with football, just kind of having a more open perspective and different priorities and just seeing, what really is important for us and in a family environment. So I guess, yeah, overall just balance.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's super cool. And for those of you, there's a lot of you actually that have experienced what I'm going to bring up, but, hopefully with, dang COVID and all that, once we, find our way through all this, I know Neil is just chomping at the bit. We can't wait to continue on with what we call like the ranch experience. So that's, we always invite our top champions on a quarterly basis out to, the Spruce's ranch, out here in Southern California. It's gorgeous. It's an amazing experience. There's been probably, over 100 winners over the years as it goes on. But, Christina, between Christina, her mom, Frankie, they have that thing dialed, and it's just really wild because honestly, they cook everything themselves. Like it's just a really neat experience. I find when most people come out and all of a sudden they're going, wait a minute, like, the person waiting on me, if you will, that's Neil's wife or, his daughter, and we all try to help out. But, it's just neat because it's, everybody takes great pride in everything that they do. So very cool. And tell us about your little brother for a little bit, if you would.
Yeah,
especially you guys being older. Like that's kind of a neat dynamic,
Right. Yeah, I mean, we grew up playing, the team sports together, baseball, basketball, football. And he had his success in them, but I feel like that team environment wasn't necessarily his thing. And he's an athlete. He's really intense, and so I think once he found jujitsu, and I think that's something that he could really dive into, and he's had a lot of success in that. And he's still he picked it up later in life, so he's still, I guess he was kind of behind the curve in some aspects, but from everyone I've talked to, I've become close with a lot of his jiu-jitsu friends that are all like world champions. They all say that he's got the potential and he's got all the tools to, become really successful. So I always follow him on that. I've been to a lot of his tournaments, and, his jiu-jitsu's obviously been really compromised with the whole COVID thing. So hopefully when that ramps back up, he can start getting back after it and continue his journey.
For those of you that don't know, Zane, and some of you may have seen Zane before because he does a weekly stint with Neil on Instagram. Usually he's behind the camera, so you may not see him as much, but he's a brown belt in his mid-20s at Gracie Baja out in Northridge, which again, it's all world champions that they're training with. He's got quite a few accolades himself. So, brown belt's right below being a black belt. I'm sure he's going to be getting that at some point, and when you're a 47-year-old and I'm still a blue belt, you look at that and you go, dang, that's, there's a lot of respect there, a lot of dedication. I can't leave out though, before we go back to football, but Francesca.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Frankie.
She's got a kind of interesting story. She wasn't necessarily, like me and Zane kind of dove into sports, and I think it kind of took her a little bit to find out what her passions were and kind of find her own path, which I'm kind of going through right now, so she's kind of a, almost inspiring to me, just kind of seeing the way that she's kind of worked to where she is now. And I can, she's 5-6 years younger than me, but I can learn a lot from her. And it's just awesome to see kind of I guess she's a young woman now.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Well, especially for me, because when I left California originally to move to Tennessee and work with a club chain, it was 2005. Again, you were a little kid, but she was, super young. And then I come back in 2015-ish, and then I just moved out the last couple of years, or last year, and like you said, she's, a young lady. And, for those of you that don't know, but she goes by Frankie, but, her given name is Francesca. And, she works with us here in the DotFit offices. She also works with some of the other businesses that we have here out of our headquarters, like PTA Global, PT on the Net. She's personally worked with me over the last few years when we were doing trade shows again before stupid COVID, and she's phenomenal. I've always said that, and that's no blowing smoke. She does a great job. She's really dedicated. And then I don't know, you might know this, but I know you've been traveling around and doing stuff too, but she's been now picking up sports like crazy. So every time I talk to her, she's like, well, we're playing tennis. Now we're playing basketball. Now let's move down to softball. And I'm like, oh, now I see what goes on, right? So she's been having a great time with all that.
Yeah, it's been awesome to kind of see her find herself and get involved with, like you just said, the family company. So I'm excited to see how she kind of progresses these next few years and where her path takes her.
Yep. All right, so let's jump back. So you finished Colorado. Next thing we know, Nelson is signed by the LA Rams, right? I mean, out of all 32 teams, he winds up in his hometown, basically, right here in California. And then to make things, I mean, come on, this is pretty darn cool, but it just happens to be the season that, if you guys have ever seen out there before on HBO, every season, they'll go into one team and do like their training camp, and they happen to be following the Rams that year. So Nelson gets a ton of airtime. Obviously they're in that first preseason game. I'm watching it, as Hard Knocks goes, and we're seeing, John Gruden and everybody else talking you up a huge storm. You light it up, I hear in the background, the stadium is screaming Spruce. At the end of the dang show, it shows you with your dad and your mom and Frankie all meeting you outside as well. Take us through that a little bit. All of a sudden you go from college, which I was going to say kind of what you said a little bit earlier when you made that jump from high school to college. It's kind of like college almost was a business though, wasn't it? I mean, to an extent, but now you go to a true business, right? I mean, what I think was it Jerry Glanville that said, NFL stands for not for long, right? So kind of a crazy thing, but come on, Nelson. I mean, we have so many people out there that, you're part of the 0.00001% that makes it, Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, that was looking back on it, that was a crazy, crazy couple of years. So like you said, I wasn't drafted. I was thinking I was going to get drafted in the later rounds, which kind of stung a little bit, not having my name called, but I ended up here in LA with the Rams, first year in LA. I was living at my parents' house, probably like one of the only guys in the NFL living out of their parents' house. And so it seemed like a perfect situation. Everything was coming together. I had a really good preseason, which as an undrafted guy, that's kind of where you got to, earn your spot throughout, training camp. And even before that with OTAs, and I had done really good. And then, you were talking about that first preseason game. It was incredible. Like that was the Rams' first game back in LA for 20 years. There was like 100,000 people in the LA Coliseum. And I got in somewhere in the third quarter and just kind of developed a quick connection with my quarterback and was able to have a really productive game. And like you said, they were doing the Hard Knocks thing and kind of documenting our entire preseason. So I got a little bit of airtime for that. So it was cool. It was awesome. It was a good experience, and I got to kind of live out my dream a little bit in that sense. I suffered a little injury in that game actually, which kind of set me back a little bit, but I got good memories of it.
So tell us a little bit more, like, what's it like as a very successful college player, one of the top, and now you're in the NFL. What is that like? Or tell me, like, is it dramatically different, or is it kind of like, like it's kind of the same thing, but just, working your way around? Obviously I have no idea. So tell us.
I would say that the biggest similarities comes from the on the field thing. Like from the time, like, that jump physically, I don't think is as much as people think. I mean, guys are just smarter and are more experienced, so things happen a little bit faster. But from a physical standpoint, it's not like people are maturing much from when they leave college to, for however long they play. Like we're leaving college at 21, 22. But I just know, just like we were talking about, just the business feel of it. You never really necessarily feel that same connection with your teammates, at least in my situation. Like you have guys, it's so cutthroat. Like you were saying, they do call it the not for long league. You have guys just coming in and you don't know who's getting cut one day, who's getting traded another day. And especially as an undrafted guy, you always have that feeling of like insecurity, like anything, any little thing goes wrong, I could be, cut, I could be going to another team. So that was kind of like the main difference that I felt on the negative side. Obviously, I made some of my best friends are still from that team, and I had a lot of positive experiences. But yeah, there are just those kind of little those feelings of insecurity and the business side of things really make themselves clear.
Yeah. And obviously this is totally from an armchair quarterback me, like who does, nothing of that. But I was always so bummed too because of timing. Whereas, that year, the head coach was somebody that was kind of known as pretty conservative. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to run. Maybe we'll pass on third down. And like you said, you were this up and coming wide receiver and needing looks. And it was like, but it was like 1 year, you know what I mean? Dang it. Because the next year, obviously, like McVay comes in, but like you said, that first game, which we all, because we follow you and we want to support you and we love watching you excel, we all remember that game and all the accolades. But like you mentioned too, on one of those catches, you wind up hurting your knee too. So, and this is what's kind of interesting. Let me just throw this out there, and then if you give us some perspective, Nelson. But Nelson, he gets hurt in the very first preseason game, right? But then he still makes the roster, not even being able to play another down in preseason, and they carry him on the active roster for the majority of the season. And for those of you that don't follow football, again, you're talking, forget this year with COVID because it's some kind of crazy stuff going on. But, what is it? The 53-man roster, you only have X amount of people as well that are dressed that day, and you made the active roster. I mean, it's pretty freaking awesome for playing in, let's say, one half of a preseason game, and you showed a whole lot out there. But take us through that if you would.
Yeah, that's time. I was obviously pumped to make the team, but having bounced around on a few other teams and seeing how hard it is to make that 53-man, it wasn't something that I necessarily appreciated as much as I should have. But yeah, you got to see what most people saw was that preseason game, but I had put in a lot of good work from the beginning of OTAs and the beginning of the off-season training period all the way up through camp, which I think was the most important and what kind of showed them what I could do. But yeah, the fact that I only played one preseason game and like having to sit on the sideline for the next three, just kind of losing my mind, like, this is where I'm supposed to be proving myself and I'm not able to, was really kind of eating at me for a little bit. But, I obviously got some relief when they told me I was going to be sticking around and made the 53-man. So yeah, that was a stressful time to say the least.
And I know I've heard your dad say this before too, but he always just, as a parent, you'll know someday if that's the route you go, but there's nothing we want more than for our kids to be successful. But he goes, Pop Warner, high school, college, never missed a down for being injured. You know what I mean? Like, knock on wood. And then you make it in the pros and, again, the game of your life and you're lighting it up and all of a sudden you get injured and it's not that you weren't good enough. You just got injured, you know what I mean? And we can't do anything about that. So. Yeah,
that was, I always say it was kind of like a blessing and a curse that I'd never been injured up to that point. Like you just said, high school, I never missed a game. College, I never missed a game, which was part of my success. Like I wasn't necessarily the most gifted athlete, but the fact that I was consistent and coaches could always rely on me to be on the field and do my job, that like went a long way for me. So the fact that I got to my first game in the NFL and I tore my PCL, which isn't necessarily a season-ending injury, but it was just enough to kind of derail me, especially as an undrafted guy. So I had to deal with, the fact that I never had been through an injury, especially the mental side of it, was kind of something that I had to adjust to, especially since it was coming at such a pivotal point. So it was a big learning process for me. It took me. Physically I healed up. I had some lingering things from that, but mentally I had to kind of just, refocus and find a way to fight through that.
Yeah. What did you kind of focus on that first year? Like what are some things that help you just get through some of that time when you weren't able to do what you grew up doing and, it was not going to give up on it?
Yeah, it was kind of I don't know. It was definitely like an adjustment period for me, just because football was always my outlet, and football was the one thing that no matter what was going on, I could just get on the field and, escape for a little bit and really dive into what I love. But for the first time, it was like I had like negative feelings towards it. You know what I mean? So it was weird just going from having 20 years of loving something and then having kind of taken away and having to adjust and find out what I do, if I do really want to keep doing this, and just different thoughts come in your head and just finding the way to work through them and talking to people helped me a lot. That's what the NFL is getting better at, getting resources for people that, need to, are battling different things. Everyone's got their struggles. So, I'm close with my teammates. That helped a lot, but it was just kind of an adjustment period. And at the time, I'm trying not to lose my mind, but at the end you kind of come out stronger from things like that. So,
well, Nelson,
it was a learning experience.
Ironically, though, it's crazy because this is what a lot of people right now in our industry are going through. You know what I mean? Like gyms are closed and they can't get out to do what they love doing in that outlet. Never mind the physical aspect, but even the mental aspect, you know? So trust me, there's a lot of people, and, you know, I knock on wood, I'm very thankful being in Southern California here that, you know, I'm able to work out in your guys' gym. So I try not to advertise that too much because I'd go crazy too. I mean, I've been there. I got the bands and body weight, but you can only do so much with that. And I know when that's something you're used to doing and you can't do it, it's in a way that's very tough. Nelson, I know, you know, it was like the one knee, then it was the other knee trying to come back. Tell us a little bit though, where you visited you landed in a few other teams there for a little bit of time in the NFL.
Yeah, so after I did kind of like a year and a half with the Rams, I had a lingering calf issue that was kind of a result of my knee injury that I could never really kind of keep healthy for an extended period of time. So I ended up from there going to Chicago, played with the Bears for a little bit, did a very brief time with the Kansas City Chiefs, and then finished with the back in LA with the Chargers. Never really got any traction there, and that's kind of what I was talking about when I realized how valuable those 53 man roster spots are, just because a lot of times, like, there's a very few bubble guys like I was that actually get a real opportunity and to show what they can do. And that's what not that I'm making any excuses, but you can kind of just tell when they necessarily don't have as much invested in you, and they're not going to give you every shot you need to succeed. So that's kind of what I felt a little bit. And then after the NFL, I actually went on to play in what was called the Alliance of American Football, which I was down in San Diego.
Which, by the way, was second in the league in receptions. Go ahead.
And
in San Diego, right? You're like, I can't get out of California for any extended period of time.
Which I'm not mad about that, but it was cool. It was cool being kind of a centerpiece of the offense again, and being able to contribute instead of just being kind of walking on eggshells, like hoping I have a spot. It was cool to kind of be able to just to be significant in the offense. And then I went on to play in the XFL last year, which was even a better experience. These startup leagues, they're not lasting right now, unfortunately. I think COVID had a big thing to do with the XFL shutting down, but I think there's a real need for them. There's a lot of talented players out there that don't really have a spot to play, and it's not like baseball where you have the minor leagues or the NBA where you have the G League. So yeah, it was cool being able to do that and getting back to actually being part of a team and contributing on the field.
Yeah. So tell us, Nelson, what do you think is next?
It's a good question. I know you see me around at the office. I kind of, wherever I can, do a little bit here and there, just see which aspects of, one of the companies I'm interested in. So eventually I'll transition into that. I still got some football left in me. So I was looking into Canada, talking to my agent about going up there and playing, which I've talked to a few guys that have gone up there and they loved it. So I was excited. I kind of committed to that. And then, with the COVID, they don't know when they're restarting. So I'm kind of just waiting on that, waiting to hear back for that. But in the meantime, I'm, doing some stuff around here, getting kind of more, I grew up hearing all these things, but mostly just understanding it on a surface level. So I'm kind of getting into the science of things, and I enjoy that, knowing how it works down to a molecular level.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It's still kind of up in the air for me, but.
And do you still have what's on your desk that I saw just a little bit ago that you were going through? He's cracking the textbooks right now between his PTA Global textbook and his NASM textbook. So we had a fun conversation about power endurance right before getting started on the call.
Yeah, I mean, I like to. I think I'm at the point now where I know my body well enough, and I know I've been training long enough, and I have enough people that are close to me that are trainers that I can write my own programs now. So, like you said, I'm going through all the periodization. I'm finishing, a power phase right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool understanding it yourself and being able to, apply it to your life. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now with my time.
Very cool. Very cool. Hey, like on another kind of fun, interesting note too. I know, with you not being able to play, I can only imagine what you're going through, but obviously as I spend a lot more time with your dad, versus being able to see you on a daily basis, those of us that know him have always, heard him say, no matter what, I always made a promise. He goes, wherever Nelson plays, I'm going to go to the game live. And I don't think he's ever missed a game, right? Like on the professional level, collegiate, anything, right? And, so I know for him, it's almost like he's shut off football when you're not playing, because he goes, if Nelson's not doing it, I don't want to watch it, But Nelson, share with us here what we talked about, maybe some of the things that you learned from your mom. And before, when I had asked you a little bit more about like the nutritional side, but what are some just general things maybe that has kind of rubbed off from your dad, especially with you sitting here as, I hate to say an adult because you're still a kid to me, but
Yeah, I mean, obviously, aside from the nutrition, I mean, just being able to see his work ethic, that's one thing. He gets up at 4 every morning, works till at least 5 every night. So having, your dad do that, that doesn't give you any excuses to take any time off. So whatever I'm doing, I try to jump into it, dedicate everything I can to it. And then just the persistence and never giving up, especially with the few of the injuries that I had the past few years, and getting cut from different teams and, not necessarily knowing where football is going to take me. Just being able to have him, he would tell me, like, if this is something you want to do, we'll be here for you. This is something you can pursue as long as you want. So just having that kind of security and knowing that my family's behind me throughout this whole thing has been big for me and letting me pursue this thing for as long as I want.
Awesome. Now, so I've got one last question for you. So we've got, that might be viewing this, whether it might be young athletes, it might be parents of young athletes, it might be coaches, but, sitting where you're sitting now and all the history of what you've gone through, what would you give as some advice to, let's say, from the Pop Warner, but especially like high school, college level, to keep going to that next level and get the most out of what they can do? Share with us some things there. If you could almost go back to yourself in Pop Warner or high school, what kind of advice would you give?
I would say if you're really committed to this and this is something you want to do, don't like take any shortcuts. Like for me, like I've talked about a little bit, I was never like the best athlete, especially once I got to college. I feel like since I've been to college, I've been the bottom of the list as far as athletes, especially for my position. So if this is something you really want to do and it's something you see yourself doing for a career, maybe take every little thing you can do to separate yourself. Like I was lucky enough to grow up in the family I did, where I had nutrition and sports medicine and everything to kind of give me little bonuses. But if this is something you really want to do, there's plenty of resources out there, especially with the internet now and the way everyone's connected, that there's ways that you can kind of separate yourself from the rest. And especially if you're trying to play at higher levels, that's what it's going to take. So but I think the main part of it is having that passion and that dedication for it, because without that, you're not going to take the time to do all those little things.
Yeah. Nelson, if you don't mind me asking, what, as an example or two, what are some of the things you're referring to besides the training component? Because I know, like, we didn't even talk about your grades and all that, and I've heard the stories of you teaching others the playbook and things like that. But I know that, from watching anyway, that always seems to be a big factor, especially at the professional level, at success. You know what I mean? Athletically, they can do it, but they might not process it up here. Whereas I know that's something that you've always done really well. But give us a couple examples, if you would.
I just think it's creating
that extra step.
Yeah, I don't know, just finding a routine that works for you and creating habits. That's one thing when I got to college that I would have like my day, especially in season, I have my day planned out where in the mornings, I'd have my recovery and getting ready for the day, transition into practice. And then after, just set aside time for film study, playbook review. And no matter what your sport is, I think that you'll be able to find a way to kind of set up your schedule and make a routine for you that works. And you'll know, I don't know, it's it's almost hard to articulate, but you'll know like what little things are going to give you an advantage in your field. And as long as you kind of don't procrastinate and you dive right into it and accept the fact that it's going to take hard work, um, I think that that's what can lead you to success.
Awesome. Awesome. And you kind of said it right there too, because at first you had even said, even if it's a different sport, but it could be anything, I mean, our world has always been more of, the health club, gym, personal training industry. And it's the same thing, right? If you want to be the best personal trainer you can be out there, like you said, don't take shortcuts. You know what I mean? Like it's, don't just go out there and not be prepared, or, whatever position that might be, whether it's a general manager or, membership, whatever it might be. So great words, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time, my man. It's great to see you around. Hopefully we're going to be seeing you out on the field again. But, like you said, I love hearing that you're good if that doesn't happen, or, that, it may, the next step is going to be coming at some point. So, we're all rooting for you. But Nelson, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, it was fun.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Thanks so much for watching. We've got some really good stuff coming up soon too. Thanks, Nelson.
No problem.
Bye now.
Yeah.